we should have federal protections for human rights, right? And I think that it's a human rights violation to infringe upon a woman's bodily autonomy without good reason. And I think that abortion...
That's not a codified right. We have codified rights, and they are federally protected. And those are codified in the Bill of Rights, and those are also codified in judicial precedent.
I'm not giving you a legal argument. I'm not giving you a legal argument. I'm giving you a moral argument. I think it is a human rights violation to infringe upon anybody's bodily autonomy without good reason. I don't think that there's any good reason to implement abortion bans infringing upon a woman's practical bodily autonomy. For that reason, I see it as a human rights violation. And because I see it as a human rights violation, and I believe that human rights should be protected by the federal government, I think that women and girls' access to abortion should also, in turn, be protected by the federal government.
Now, I've watched your lives, and I've seen the caliber of people you have come up. You know that half of human beings are below average intelligence. You're not debating people of high caliber, and you're not being presented with counter arguments. But again, I don't see how what you're doing is any different than a megachurch pastor, and I don't see how it's any different than what Trump is doing, because you have a vested interest in gaining the most views. This is called outrage media. So you're going to do what's going to get you the most popularity. And the fact that you're taking donations shows that you have that interest. And it does indicate that you are showing high levels of your own trait narcissism. And you have the effect of a megachurch pastor. You know that. I'm telling you that right now. You have the blonde hair, blue eyes, the smile. I know people just like you. I've met them in my life. You don't know anything about me, but you could ask me.
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
You could show some cognitive. You should show some cognitive empathy. And if you wanted to know about my life, I could tell you, and then maybe you could make some, proper assessments of who I am.
Well, I mean,
you have a lot more.
He's basically calling white men evil.
You have a lot more. I don't believe in good or evil. There's a lot more public information about you.
What an argument to come from somebody on the right. What an argument to come from somebody on the right. Okay, listen. So you're telling me that I have like a vested interest in getting as many views as possible because of outrage media and the impact that would have on the algorithm of any content creator. You know what? Instead of me giving you my thoughts about how I deal with the algorithmic incentive of creating outrage media, I'm actually going to go ahead and direct you to YouTube, where I want you to type in Dean Withers Aspen Institutes of Ideas, where I took a day or two off unpaid to travel to Aspen, Colorado to speak on a live panel about how I deal with the algorithmic incentive for the production of outrage media and how it's something that I don't attempt to engage in, and I try to stay truth apt and oriented. So I mean that's definitely something that you could do. I feel like that would be great. Once again, I mean, in a sentence or less, if you want to kind of like wrap it up here. So
let's transition back to politics.
Okay.
Let's transition back to politics. But I do recognize everything you're saying is the offense of what I've already argued. That being said, let's not talking about abortion, because I don't have a strong view on abortion. I'm not a woman. But let's use it as a corollary.
That's why you support Trump.
Let's use that as a corollary, because I think that him actually, one instance is in the case of abortion where it's been devolved to state courts. I think that's perfectly in line with our Constitution and our system. I think it's a very good thing, because human systems are inherently hierarchical. And when you have a winner-takes-all system and it's determined by the federal government what local laws concerning abortion is, it allows there to be basically a system that doesn't actually operate for everybody. And we have our system. No, this is what the founding fathers argued, and it's based on Plato's Republic. It's the idea that we have independent polises and communities based around certain values, because if there is a strong man or a would-be king or somebody who came into power, sure, you can have a philosopher king who's meant, who has good intentions for people, but even when that person leaves, if you have that sort of winner-takes-all system, then it'll eventually become dominated by totalitarians and authoritarians. So that's exactly why we have the federal cake system that we have, and that's exactly why we have states, in order to have, locally appropriate laws.
Okay.
That's the entire foundation of our system.
So what you're describing, this winner-takes-all scenario, where we have an enforced federal law for the total jurisdiction of the country, is exactly what the Union did when they won the Civil War.
That's actually not the case. That the fight was over two different things. It was over states' rights for slavery, and it's also whether or not our state has a right to secede or not. And you'll see a shift in, you say the Union, but the Union was is an alliance of northern states, and the precursor to that was the Hartford Convention. And during the War of 1812, they actually supported secession. And this is the same group of people that opposed it during the Union. So no, that was not their goal, and that was not adjudicated. You can't have a legal precedent adjudicated through victory through war.
Okay, so I said that the goal of the union was to enforce and have federal legislation that applied to all constituents of the country. That was a goal in the sense of not wanting to allow states the ability to legalize slavery, right?
You're misconstruing legal terms because it has nothing to do with legislation.
I'm not really
because
using legal
terms.
terms.
It was a question of if anything, it was a question of executive privilege and whether or not legislation as well as codified rights and those that were uncodified can be impeded for a national interest by the executive through things like the executive order and military action, as well as martial law.
So do you think that you agreed with the Confederacy?
If that's the conclusion you're drawing, you're not actually listening to what I'm saying.
It wasn't a conclusion; it was a question.
No, I do not agree with the Confederacy. I think
okay. So I just want to clarify, like,
basis.
You do think?
I think the entire basis. I think the entire basis of the United States is a union that we've all opted into, and once we've opted into a union, it's no different than perhaps what is ethical in a marriage.
Check this shit out.
Which is to stay committed.
Check this shit out. I think that the winner should take all, or we should have federal protections for human rights. Right? And I think that it's a human rights violation to infringe upon a woman's bodily autonomy without good reason. And I think that abortion...
That's not a codified right. We have codified rights and they are federally protected. And those are codified in the Bill of Rights and those are also codified in judicial precedent.
I'm not giving you a legal argument. I'm not giving you a legal argument. I'm giving you a moral argument.
So you're switching back and forth based on what you want to, based on what's convenient for you, because you were positing a legal argument earlier.
What now you're switching to a question of ethics.
But
no, can I ask you to quickly repeat in like 2 sentences or less for the legal argument that I was positing? Because I think that you were just likely you were misunderstand. 1 second, Joe. I think that you were likely misunderstanding what I was saying, because I've always upheld the same exact argument for why I think that abortion should be protected at the federal level. So I think that you were misunderstanding what I had said earlier. If I said anything earlier to explain why you're now saying that I'm switching between a legal argument and a moral argument. So just to clarify, the moral argument that you're saying I'm switching to is a moral argument surrounding what are human rights and should human rights be protected for the most people possible. So what was the legal argument that I gave earlier that I'm now equivocating to as a moral argument?
So you need to reframe that argument if you want to be more clear. But the way what you said was,
I'm not asking. So I can give you more clarity on my moral argument, but I'm asking you to describe the legal argument.
You can't interrupt me. You can't interrupt me while I'm talking because I can't get out a full idea. Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure that you're
answering complex. Well, I'll answer the question, but I also want to say that you just said that a winner takes all system is good, and we can recognize that ethics are very subjective. Some people might say it's okay to murder you. It doesn't make, I don't know if I'm allowed to say murder on TikTok, unalive you. It doesn't make it okay. And when you have a winner,
I didn't say that a winner takes all scenario is good. I said that
anybody who gets power can apply their ethics, their subjective ethics. So you don't want a winner takes all system because that's autocratic and that's actually fascist. That's the basis of fascism, is paternalism based on a winner take.
I'm now muting you because you're misunderstanding what I said. I just said that human rights should be protected at the federal level. And once again, you're still not answering the question, because the question that I asked you is what was a legal argument that I gave you earlier that I'm now equivocating to and in between with a moral argument?
Legal rights are already protected by the federal government. And what you said was that the Civil War was fought over whether or not the federal government had the right to make legislation and protect rights, which was already ruled on. That's been ruled on since the beginning of, that's been ruled on since Marbury versus Madison.
There is a misunderstanding. So I think that you're more focused on like listening to talk, like not listening to listen. So what I'll ask you,
I'm listening to everything you're saying.
So you asked me not to interrupt you, but you could interrupt me. I think that's quite a hypocritical double standard. So now I'm going to start interrupting you too.
Go ahead.
So anyways, I'm going to go back to what I was saying. So no, my argument for
let's just not tell each other what we're saying because you're changing.
Now you have a mute on you, Joe. I understand that it is very typical.
Don't tell me I'm saying things I'm not saying.
There's your third interruption. That's really funny coming from the man that said I was attempting to tell you that I do believe that a winner takes all situation is good. So I don't think that you have any ground to say don't tell me what I was saying when that's not what I was saying. But I'd also like to clarify, Joe, I've not superimposed any view on top of yourself. I've not spoken for you, and I've not put words in your mouth, because this whole time I've actually been trying to tell you what I think, what I feel, how I think things should be. Right. So I've actually not been interpreting any argument that you've made, because you really haven't made an argument. But now I'm going to go back to what I was saying, Joe, and I'm going to ask I'm going to ask you to please listen to me. I think that would be great. So
this is all being recorded. So everything you said will be recorded. You have to realize that. So changing it down doesn't matter. And I did make an argument. My argument was
always recorded. Joe, you can't interrupt me, buddy.
My argument was the devolution of power is a good thing.
Thank you so much. I think that I'm going to have you stop talking here so I could finish speaking, Joe. It's how conversations work. They're a two-way street. I understand that, part of human nature is to get flustered when in the wrong. I mean, we were talking about this at length around 30 minutes ago. I don't know if you were here for that or not. One quick announcement that I just want to give to you and everybody else that likes to come up onto these live streams is I just want to point out real quick that being wrong is not an ending point. It's not the finish line. It's not the stop. Being wrong is a point of opportunity where you could explore greater truth. So now that you're getting flustered because you think that I may be proving you wrong, I'm just going to ask you to drop it, right? Expose yourself and be willing to
I have the same message for
dialogue. Yeah, that applies
okay
to me.
It's
That
okay
applies to
that
me and everybody else. But now I'm going to go back to the argument.
So it's good you're telling yourself that.
I'm going to go. Oh, okay. All right, Joe. I'm going to go back to the argument that I gave you. Very simple. I think that human rights should be protected by the federal government. I think it is a human rights violation to infringe upon anybody's bodily autonomy without good reason. I don't think that there's any good reason to implement abortion bans infringing upon a woman's practical bodily autonomy. For that reason, I see it as a human rights violation. And because I see it as a human rights violation, and I believe that human rights should be protected by the federal government, I think that women and girls' access to abortion should also, in turn, be protected by the federal government.
There is no enumerated right to have a proactive medical service conducted upon you as a point of bodily autonomy. That does not exist in the Bill of Rights, and that exists in no judicial precedent. And if you're arguing that that should exist, then it has to be created in an amendment. But it doesn't currently exist underneath our system. So, and I would encourage you to practice some philosophical and intellectual honesty and apply that to other areas, including whether or not there should have been a mandatory COVID shot, as well as to the right to bear arms, the right to freedom of speech, even in cases where it might be discriminatory against another human being, which I don't personally support. But if we're going to make that argument, then we have to also say that that's the case with all these other enumerated rights, because you're talking about rights that aren't actually even enumerated.
All right, phenomenal. So you gave me two separate responses. The first response that you gave me was, well, Dean, that's not an enumerated right. And the second response you gave me was, well, I'm sure I could bring up a bunch of different scenarios where in order to maintain consistency upon your beliefs, you'd also have to hold to particular conclusions within these other senses. So we could go through those other senses. Once I'm able to describe my position, you could happily try to make like a counter argument to show that in order for me to maintain logical consistency, I also have to believe in like mandatory or like non-mandatory vaccine shots. You could make that argument if you want. That's fine. But obviously you haven't made it yet, so you can't just draw the conclusion without making the argument. Now I'm going to respond to the first part of your statement where I told you that human rights should be protected at the federal level. I think that infringing upon somebody's human right without good reason is a human rights violation. And I think that's what's happening to women in the context of access to abortion. So you're right. That's not an enumerated right. In fact, that was what the Dobbs decision was, that the 14th Amendment and protections to privacy did not grant an enumerated or non-enumerated right to access abortion for women. I'm not making a legal argument, though, because I don't believe that we define human rights through a legal lens. I don't think that legality should inform us of what human rights are or are not. Think about it this way, right? Like in Germany in the 1920s, I think that people had a human right to life, even if they're Jewish. The legal system in Germany at the time disagreed. I don't think that changed that fact. Or like Latin America in some states, 16-year-olds have the legal right to consent to sex. Okay. Well, I don't think that they actually can consent just because the law says so. And basically what this amounts to is the fact that I'm making a normative claim, an argument of what should be the case, right? And I'm not defining a human right based upon what the law says. I'm defining human rights based upon what my normative framework of morality would say, right? So, in other words, I'm saying that it should be considered a legal human right. And that's why I advocate for said federal protections.
No, what you're saying is that your body of ethics is somehow superior to another person's body of ethics. And because the fact that what you're arguing are rights are not enumerated, that suggests that basically what you think is right somehow should be the illegal equivalent of right. And that's a very, very dangerous position to be taking, because just because you believe that your way of thinking is right and your judgment on ethics is right, you have to realize that if we apply that same standard and we allow anybody who basically has a different conception of rights than you to take power, and they do exactly what you're talking about doing, which is enforcing your system of ethics on others, because not everybody does believe that that right to bodily autonomy exists in the same way that not everyone believes that human fetuses have the right to live, right? But that's another body of ethics, and they would argue the exact same thing. What I see two groups of people who are both trying to externalize and enforce and I don't support a blanket ban on abortion.
Check this out.
I don't support a blanket ban on gay marriage. I think that's all ridiculous. But I see the exact same psychological mirroring on both sides.
Joe, I got something for you.
Autocratic.
I got something for you to check out. Are you ready? Do you think that murder should be illegal on the federal level?
I think that murder is illegal on the federal level, but I also understand that there's different. I also understand that there's different statutory definitions of murder, and we could take.
That's not what I asked you. Let's give you a very
sociological. We could take a sociological interpretation of murder.
Very nice words, but that's not what I asked you.
Manslaughter.
Should me ripping off your grandma's head be illegal on the federal level? Do you think that me ripping off your grandma's head, should that be illegal on the federal level?
I think so, and I think that's almost universally accepted.
Watch this out. Watch this out.
Abortion rights are not.
No. One second.
They're not.
1 second. Why? Why do you think that should be illegal on the federal level?
Personally, for me, because I think that is a violation of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Or pursuit of property, depending on which philosophy you're referencing.
So in other words, are you saying that a violation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is wrong, and that's why it should be illegal?
I'm saying that is statutorily and judicially the precedent. I'm not saying whether or not it should be or not, because there is another person out there who would say that.
Okay, then you're not answering my question.
Hold on, there isn't a...
I'm actually not going to hold on. I'm going to mute you because you just made it clear. You just made it clear that you weren't answering my question, because my question was, do you think this should be illegal on the federal level? And then in your response, you literally said, and I quote, I'm not saying if this should be the case or shouldn't be the case. So, I'm going to mute you because you're not answering my question. And you admitted that you weren't answering my question when you said, I'm not saying that it should or shouldn't be. Okay, well, say it. Should that be illegal on the federal level? Yes or no?
I personally think that it should be illegal. I do not think that my system of ethics should be applied and made the blanket law of the land.
Okay.
That's the difference between me.
So you're saying you personally think that should... I'm not going to allow you to gish gallop. I'm not going to allow you to gish gallop this. These are simple questions.
You're getting heated. You're crashing out. You're crashing out.
I'm actually not getting heated. I'm being assertive so we could try to follow a line of logic.
No, you're crashing.
So I'm not crashing out. I'm being assertive because I want you to follow the argument.
You're being passive aggressive.
I'm not even trying to be passive aggressive. I'm just trying to put like the guardrails up on the bowling alley lane to get you to follow and track.
You're trying to control the conversation because you can't
make one point
from long form debate.
I'm trying to benefit
because you can't have. You're not communicating complex ideas.
Well, you're equivocating between long form complex debate and gish galloping. So I don't want you to gish gallop. All I want you to tell us is you did just inform us all that you think it should be illegal to rip grandma's heads off on the federal levels. Okay, why do you think that should be illegal?
Great use of Darvo. Way to reframe what you're doing as what I'm doing. And I think
calling me a narcissist is not answering my question.
There's times where ripping a person's grandma's head off is legal. There's times where it's self-defense. There's times where you have psychotic episodes, and it's actually not ruled to be murder. So again, that's a gray area. That's actually not a...
Okay, then we'll make it even more clear.
And any jurisdiction, including federal.
Tell me why you think it should be illegal on the federal level to rip a grandma's head off outside of a psychotic episode, not defending yourself. Why should that be illegal?
Maybe she's in an accident and you have to conduct an emergency surgery and you're trying to render aid and you accidentally do it.
So we're going to use the term unjustifiably to account for all of these scenarios where it can seemingly be justified. Watch this. Why do you think it should be illegal to unjustifiably rip grandmothers' heads off on the federal level?
I didn't use that term, and that's not a legal term that I'm gonna fall into because
not a legal term.
You have to. The entire purpose of the legal system is to find the most just outcome. So you can't use this. The term justice does not exist under the letter of law. There's no such thing as. You could use something like unjust enrichment, but there's no codified.
Sorry, I muted you because you're not answering
justice
my question.
Is adjudicated through the courts.
Okay, check this out.
I don't think you understand the legal system enough to be having this conversation.
Check this out. I think my understandings are perfectly clear, as well as the understandings of everybody else watching this live. Watch this, okay? Everybody, this is going to be cool. Should torturing newborn babies be federally illegal? Yes or no?
I think it should be, and I think it is. But I don't think that. What I think should be the case has to be the law of the land.
Question.
That's the difference between me and you.
Question. So I asked the question, do you think that torturing babies should be illegal at the federal level? You said yes. You said yes, you do think that. So now in 3 sentences or less, tell us why you think torturing babies should be illegal at the federal
You're
level.
not listening to me because I've made two different points. I said that on a personal and ethical level, it should be. The second point is I don't think that my system of ethics should be winner takes all and it should be one size fits all. And that's exactly what you're advocating.
Okay.
So answer that point.
So-
Stop focusing on half
So
the
then you're not answering the question. Because
stop
remember,
focusing on half the clock
I'm
because
asking
you're
you,
trying to pull me into a cyclical tangent that I don't want to participate in because
so you don't want to participate in telling us, okay,
you're not-
watch this, Joe. So remember, the
manipulative.
question I asked you is
being manipulative.
the question I asked you is why do you think it should be federally illegal to torture babies? Okay, right? Now the reason why you are calling me manipulative for
The question
asking
you
me
asked
this-
is if
one
it
second.
should be.
The reason you are calling
If it
me
should be.
yes, why that if you think that should be federally illegal.
You just
Okay?
you just
Right,
changed.
that is the question I asked you. Now the reason that you're calling me manipulative for me asking you
Changing your
this
question.
the reason that you're calling me a narcissist for asking you this question, the reason that you're calling this a tangent when I'm asking you this question is because you know the answer to the question, why should it be federally illegal to torture babies, is that that's wrong, right? And if we explore the fact that you think it's wrong, that's going to be in relation to whatever your normative ethical / moral claims, principles, etc. would be. And you know, if you admit that, then you're going to be refuting this argument that you've been attempting to make that it's somehow fascist and wrong to want to vote for and enforce legislation on the basis of personal ethical beliefs.